Welcome to Break the Cycle with Bethany Dotson, the podcast for high achieving professional women who struggle with codependency, attracting emotionally unavailable partners, and who repeat dysfunctional patterns in love. I'm your host, Bethany Dotson. And if you want to learn more about how to break your cycle in love, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and be the first to know when a new episode drops. I'll see you inside. I want to talk about how to embrace vulnerability after narcissistic abuse. And this is especially for you if you feel like you've repeatedly failed in your love life and you might be 40, 50, 60. You want to share your life with somebody, but you can't seem to get over your trust issues. You can't seem to let the walls down. And I'm going to talk to you about what it takes on this video. And I'm going to start with some common mistakes. I want to talk about two big traps that people get into when they feel like they're a failure on the inside. And you might be going to work, plastering a smile on your face, working your you-know-what off. But the number one mistake that I see people doing who have a history of failed relationships, they have a dysfunctional pattern, and they want to be vulnerable. One mistake that they do to try to heal or to try to get their mind off of feeling like a failure is an unhealthy coping strategy, and that is being a workaholic or staying chronically busy. And I've talked about this in other videos, but it is always worth repeating that usually when somebody exits a dysfunctional relationship, they've spent an expense to a deficit. They've bankrupt themselves emotionally on a person, on hoping the relationship works out. They have done way more than their fair share to try to make the relationship work. They've probably done counseling together. They probably convinced their partner to get counseling. And so they've done a lot. They've been extremely busy in that relationship trying to make it work. This is actually a trauma response because they're most of the time walking on eggshells in that relationship and being on guard and looking for ways to alter their behavior, not say the wrong thing or apologize faster or do whatever they need to do to keep the boat sailing evenly and not rock the boat. So when she exits that relationship, most people actually feel worse, right? They think they might feel a little bit of relief. But what I often find is a lot of women for a while feel worse because they no longer have the source of their addiction in their life. And a lot of times women will replace their ex with researching narcissistic abuse and use that as a tool or a substitute for her addiction to a person. So when you have that pattern and you want to have a great relationship and it's been several months, maybe several years, and sometimes unconscious pattern that you might fall into is then becoming a workaholic. You have a hard time saying no at work. You bend over backwards. You might feel victimized at work. You might feel like your boss is out to get you. You might look around at other coworkers in your department and feel like they're getting better treatment than you are. And the big issue, the biggest thing here is that you feel like a victim. You feel like a victim. And it's not to make what everybody in your work environment or whatever your family or friends are doing to you right. But when you feel like a victim, that severely impacts the choices you make in your life. And one of the big pitfalls of constantly feeling like a victim and feeling like you can't open yourself up is you put up a wall. And when you put up a wall, what tends to happen is that subconsciously you tend to attract more situations and people into your life that push your buttons and re-victimize you because you're not truly dealing and effectively healing the trauma underneath. You're just coping with it on the surface by staying chronically busy and being a workaholic. So that is the number one mistake that I see a lot of women falling into consciously or unconsciously when they're trying to attract a healthy partner and they've had a long, and when I say long, like it's usually lifelong, 30 or 40 years of falling into the same unfulfilling relationship patterns, is being a workaholic. They want to be vulnerable with somebody, but they don't know how. And instead they kind of just slide. They replace the X with an addiction to work and staying chronically busy. And all that does is make her essentially emotionally unavailable. You can't be vulnerable when you feel like you're exhausted all the time and you're putting out fires and you're just trying your best to get through the day. There's no way you can be vulnerable, because in order to be truly vulnerable in your life and then with other people, you have to have a sense of safety in your life. And if you find that you are almost always in unsafe relationships, and then when you take a very honest look and widen your lens in your life, and you're in unsafe work environments, you're in unsafe friendships, this is because that dynamic is comfortable and it's familiar for you. And it's usually stemming, you're unconsciously creating these situations in your life because you have unhealed trauma. So being a chronic busy bee, being a workaholic is a big trap. The other big trap that I see people getting into that stops them or that hinders them from learning to be vulnerable in life and in relationships, and certainly intimate relationships, is over identifying as a woman who attracts narcissists, or over identifying with their smallness. And in my work, I distinguish between your small self and your big self. When I say your small self, you might say, oh, I just have a broken picker, or oh, I always choose shit men, or oh, I have alcoholic parents, or oh, I'm codependent, and constantly over identifying with that part of you that becomes who you are. When in reality, that's not who you are entirely. That's part of your experience in life. But essentially, are you just a woman who's codependent? Are you only a woman who has had shit relationships? Are you only somebody who constantly attracts narcissists? No. But if you continue to over identify with, I come from dysfunction, or I always have dysfunctional relationships, or I've got a lot of baggage, if you constantly buy into that story, what you're essentially doing is telling your subconscious mind, yeah, I'm a train wreck. Yeah, I don't deserve a good relationship. Yeah, I've got a lot of trauma and it's not safe for me to open up and be vulnerable. And when you constantly say those things to yourself, and you probably on some level also probably say to yourself, what's wrong with me? Why do other people seem to get it better than I can? Why do other people who have dysfunctional childhoods suddenly get into great relationships and I can't? When you're over identifying with your smallness, you are going to keep yourself stuck. And when you keep yourself stuck, your coping strategies tend to be saying yes when you mean no, overextending yourself, being a people pleaser, feeling guilty all of the time, feeling ashamed all of the time. And do those emotions help you feel safe? No. And so you can't really be vulnerable unless you first condition how to feel safe with yourself, how to feel safe in your own body, how to feel safe with your emotions. And you have to be willing to get uncomfortable if you want to heal your trauma and if you want to have a healthy relationship. So the two main ways that we do this here, and the two main ways that, if you practice this consistently, are going to lead you to healthy relationship with yourself and healthy intimate relationships, is number one, mastering the skill set of emotionally regulating yourself, mastering learning how to manage your emotions. And when I say manage your emotions, I don't mean opening a bottle of wine at night. I don't mean shopping and maxing out your credit cards on Amazon or Sephora. I don't mean getting on a bunch of dating apps and going on a lot of dates with people to try to keep yourself busy because you have the belief that time is running out for you and you're getting too old and that your options are limited. What I mean is learning to effectively navigate your painful emotions that you experience every day and the painful emotions that you have suppressed or repressed from past experiences, learning how to navigate those emotions safely and effectively. And here we use trauma-informed methods because when you have trauma, you need to be working with somebody who's trauma-informed, number one. Number two, you need to be using a method that incorporates your body. Why? Because your trauma from the past is not just in your minds. It's not just stored in your brain. Yes, your brain gets wired differently when you have trauma in your childhood or in past relationships, but it also gets stored in your body. You have nerve endings in your body. You have hormonal centers in your body that get impacted by chemicals your brain signals to your body when you're in fight or flight mode. So trauma is stored as wiring, a certain way that your brain is wired, and then also as an interconnectedness, a webbing, a constellation of a memorized emotional reactions in your body to stressors, to things that make you uncomfortable in your life. One of the reasons a lot of people ignore red flags in adult relationships is because ignoring red flags is actually a trauma response. Earlier in life, they may have had a parent or caregiver who was abusive, overbearing, a lot of intensity, something along these lines. And the way that they responded to that situation was by shutting down or freezing, fight, flight, freeze. They froze. And so sometimes this freezing response gets translated in adult relationships by not being able to communicate effectively during conflict, such as seeing a red flag, such as seeing bad behavior about the new person that you're dating and not knowing how to approach that. So you have to be using trauma-informed methods that incorporate your body, bring your body on board, things like breath work, things like being aware of what's happening in your body on a consistent basis throughout the day to retrain how your brain is wired, and then retrain your emotional reactions to stressors in your life. And when you do both of these things in tandem, consistently, the key word here is consistently. Most people don't see changes in their life because it's very simple. They're not consistent. When you do this consistently, you start to show up differently in your life. You start to show up more emotionally available for yourself. You slow down. You're no longer being addicted to busyness or work. You're able to ride the wave, as I say with my clients, through painful negative emotions fully and completely without making it mean that you're a bad person or something's wrong with you. You're able to emotionally regulate. So you need to master the skill of emotionally regulating yourself big time. That's the number one thing. Everybody needs this, but especially if you have a lifelong history of dysfunctional relationships, you always wind up being the fixer. You always bend over backwards. You bleed yourself dry. You feel resentful. It's very likely that you have unhealed trauma in your past. And feeling resentful is a way that you create emotional distance to avoid intimacy. So when you want to have a healthy relationship, when you want to actually drop the walls and let somebody all the way in, when you actually want to develop healthy emotional intimacy with another person and yourself, first and foremost, and another person eventually, you need to learn how to emotionally regulate so that you're not unconsciously turning to unhealthy coping skills to take your mind off of your feelings, which is a huge trap that so many people get into. The second thing that you need to be incorporating is stepping out of your comfort zone on a regular basis. And stepping out of your comfort zone might mean making new friends. It might mean going skydiving. It might mean telling your boss, I'm done with this job. It might mean booking that trip across the world by yourself. No, you're not going with anybody. You're just taking yourself. Could be going out and sitting at a very nice 5-star restaurant and having dinner alone by yourself. It could be a number of things, but you have to step out of your comfort zone on a consistent basis and put yourself in situations in your life where you are going to be vulnerable, where you could meet the face of rejection or abandonment or judgment by other people. And it's in these challenging moments that you then get to use your skill of emotional regulation, your trauma-informed methods to elevate you and move you through that experience in a healthy way where you're staying online, you're staying connected to your emotions, you're effectively navigating your emotions, and you're not running or defaulting to a trauma response. So just to quickly recap, How do I get to be vulnerable? How do I get vulnerable? How do I embrace vulnerability when I have massive trust issues? When every guy that I've ever thought was the one, my last ex especially, I was so convinced he was the right person for me, and he turned out to be the worst abuser of my life. I speak to women all the time. This also happened to me, by the way. The two biggest things that you need to start implementing immediately if you truly want to have a healthy relationship moving forward is healing your trauma using trauma-informed methods, working with a coach, working with a therapist who's trauma-informed. You want to be working with somebody who's going to keep you focused on your future and not rehashing and recycling the past, and not letting you use your sessions as a vent session to talk about your ex or all the problems of the day. Because the more you talk about your past, the more you reinforce the programming in your brain and in your nervous system of your trauma responses. So you need to be using effective strategies to rewire your brain and your nervous system out of the default mode and into what you want. It has been shown in research that in order to heal trauma, you need to be producing higher levels of oxytocin on a regular basis. And when you do that, you train your brain to do this on a normal basis, and higher levels of oxytocin in your brain and in your body override that trauma programming. You literally rewire yourself to be somebody who's a match for healthy relationships. So emotionally regulating, using trauma-informed methods, working with a coach or a professional therapist who's going to move you forward. Step number 2 is getting out of your comfort zone on a regular basis. Doing things like being vulnerable on a date, on a first date, doing things like quitting your job and starting your dream business, doing things like being more vulnerable and emotionally present and sharing something shameful about yourself with a close family member or with one of your kids, when you know your kids probably resent you if you stay too long with that one guy you dated. So you need to be doing things that stretch your comfort zone. And for most people, these two things, healing their trauma, emotional regulation, and stretching their comfort zone, when it's left up to them and when they've had 30, 40, 50, 60 years of default trauma programming that they've been defaulting to, learning how to be consistent is challenging. And it's not easy. It's simple, but it's not easy. So if you realize, yes, I've got walls. Yes, I know I can't do this myself. Yes, I'm turning to work to fill the hole. It's not filling the hole. In fact, it's making me a lot worse. Yes, I'm a chronic busy person. I feel, and then like at night when I'm going to bed and I have nothing to do, then all the feelings come up and I hate myself and I don't know how to deal with this. If that's you and you've recognized I've had shit relationships my entire life, I know I can't keep doing this anymore. And I know that I'm not one of those women who wants to say, fuck men, I'm never going to date again. And I know that jadedness and bitterness and resentment is not the emotional home that I want to live in. And you know you need help and therapy hasn't gotten you over the hump, or you feel like you're spinning your wheels, then book a call. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk, and we'll have a very honest conversation about why you're still stuck. We're going to get you super clear. A lot of people have an idea. They think they know why, but they're not 100% sure. So we're going to get you super clear on why you are still spinning your wheels at the bottom of the mountain and you're not actually climbing it. And then we're going to get you very clear on what you want. Not the safe goal, not, oh, it'd be nice if I met some guy and he was this way, but it doesn't have to be this way. We're going to get you very clear on what you really want, how you want to feel every day emotionally, how that impacts your kids, how that impacts your bank account, how that impacts your career, and then eventually what a healthy relationship feels like for you, looks like for you. How do you know it's healthy? We're going to get you super clear on those details, so that by the time that we're done with our call, you're going to be very clear on what you need to be doing. If we can help you bridge that gap, help you overcome a lifelong pattern of stuckness in your relationships, stuckness in the relationship with yourself, heal that trauma, overcome that codependency, we'll make an invitation to show you what it looks like to work with us. If for whatever reason on that call, we're not sure that we can get your result, we'll tell you, we'll give you the next step for you, refer you to somebody else, so that either way you have the next step to start changing and transforming your life. So bethanydotson.com/talk. You do need to be professional. You're successful in other areas of your life. Number 2, you're single or divorced. You're not hoping It's going to work out with a guy that you've been sleeping with who's been stringing you along for the last year. Okay, you're done. You're like, absolutely done. I cannot keep doing this. I'm not still having the affair. I'm not hoping it's going to work out with my husband. I've reached the point of threshold where I am done. And then lastly, you've preferably had some therapy. You've already done things. You've already started taking off of the runway, so to speak, but you can't get above 10,000 feet. You're stuck hovering here. So you've already done therapy. You maybe have already done some self-help, but you still have a gap, and you recognize you need an expert and a professional in your corner to move you over that hump to get you where you want to go. Have a beautiful day. Take care. Thank you for tuning in to today's show. A brand new episode drops each week. Be sure to click and subscribe. And remember, healing trauma, codependency, and your lifelong pattern in love does not happen by itself. You need expert guidance and evidence-based methods. And I've helped hundreds of incredible women from all over the country heal betrayal trauma and reclaim their confidence while falling wildly in love with their own lives and attracting healthy relationships. If you like what you heard today and you want to see if you're fit to work with us, go to bethanydotson.com/talk. That's bethanydotson.com/talk and book a call to speak with us today. We'll get on the phone for about 45 minutes and get you crystal clear on 3 things. The real reason you keep attracting dysfunctional relationships, even if you know better or even if you've done tons of work on yourself. What you really want in a relationship, how you want to feel emotionally every single day in your life, and what lifestyle changes you want to make. And then number 3, the exact strategy you need to be using to get there. Again, healing trust issues, codependency, and a lifelong pattern does not happen without expert guidance. We've helped hundreds of women across the country heal complex trauma, codependency, and have the healthiest relationships ever, both with themselves and with others. Go to bethanydotson.com/talk to book your call today. I'll see you on the next episode.